On the dry, windy world of Kalis IV, a small human colony had grown for many years. People built homes from local stone and metal sheets. They planted crops in red soil and raised children under two pale suns. The colony was not rich, but it was free. Families lived close and helped each other every day. Children played in dusty streets and laughed loud enough to carry over the market noise. The Galactic Empire ruled most of known space. The Arkan Dominion sat at its center, with tall, thin bodies covered in smooth gray scales. They had sharp eyes and long fingers that moved fast. Their ships filled the sky, and their soldiers wore bright armor. Viceroy Thalkar led this sector. He liked power, and he liked fear. He often said soft species needed hard lessons to stay in line. For a long time, the humans on Kalis IV paid tribute. They sent ore and grain and machine parts to the Empire ships. Every cycle the amount grew a little. The people grumbled, but they paid, because fighting meant death. Then one day the new demand came. It was twice as much as before. The colony council met in a big hall made of packed earth. They talked for hours. Some wanted to pay. Some said no more. The vote ended close, but the answer was clear. They would not send the extra tribute. Word reached Viceroy Thalkar fast. He sat in his command ship high above the planet. His claws tapped on the arm of his throne chair. He smiled with thin lips and ordered his troops to prepare a lesson. The Dominion did not allow open refusal. It made other client worlds think they could do the same. Market day arrived, bright and hot. Stalls lined the wide plaza. Vendors sold fruit, bread, tools, and cloth. Children ran between legs, chasing each other with sticks. Mira Voss was 6 years old. She had dark hair tied in 2 braids, and bright, curious eyes. She held her mother's hand while they walked past tables of fresh vegetables. Her mother, Lena, was tall and strong. She spoke for the colony council, and many people listened to her words. Suddenly, the sky grew dark with landing ships. Dust swirled as ramps dropped. Dominion soldiers marched out in perfect rows. Their boots made loud thumps on the ground. People stopped talking and stepped back. The soldiers carried long rifles and wore helmets that hid their faces. Viceroy Thalkar walked down the main ramp last. He wore a red cloak and held a tall staff with a glowing tip. He looked around at the silent crowd and raised his voice. "This colony has chosen defiance," he said. "The Empire will not accept such insult. Today, you learn the cost." Soldiers moved quick. They pushed people aside and formed a wide circle in the center of the plaza. Then 4 of them grabbed Mira. They pulled her from her mother's arms. Lena fought hard. She kicked and shouted, but more soldiers held her down. A stun baton hit her side, and she fell to her knees, gasping. Mira looked small between the tall soldiers. She did not cry. She stared up with wide eyes, trying to understand. Soldier forced her to her knees on the hard ground. Viceroy Thalkar stepped forward. He raised his plasma lance. The weapon hummed with blue light. He pointed it at the child. "Let every world see," he said. "This is what happens when humans forget their place." The lance fired once. A bright flash cut through the air. Mira's body jerked and fell forward. Smoke rose from the wound. The smell of burned cloth filled the plaza. Lena screamed once. Then the soldiers pressed a gag over her mouth. Other humans stood frozen. Faces went pale. Hands clenched into fists. No one moved. No one spoke. Thalkar turned to face the crowd. He lifted the lance high. "Victory is ours," he declared. "The Empire endures. Let this image burn into your minds." Hollow cameras floated above. They captured everything. The feed went live to every Dominion world and client species. People on distant planets watched in their homes and ships. Some nodded in approval. Some looked away. Many felt nothing, because humans were just another soft species. On Kalis IV, the soldiers expected shouts or tears or running feet. Instead, the humans did something strange. Every adult in the plaza turned their back at the same moment. They faced away from the body and away from the viceroy. No words came, no gestures followed, just silence and turned backs. The children copied their parents. Small shoulders squared, and tiny feet shifted to face the same way. Thalkar frowned. He did not understand the gesture. He thought it showed fear or shame. He laughed loud and ordered his troops to leave. The soldiers marched back to their ships, engines roared, and dust rose again. The plaza emptied fast. Only a few stayed behind to care for Lena and cover Mira with a clean cloth. The footage spread fast across human networks. On Earth, in crowded cities, people stopped work to watch. On colony ships in deep space, crews gathered around screens. In hidden bases, soldiers paused training to see the truth. The image of a small girl falling stayed in every mind. Within hours, encrypted channels filled with messages. They killed a kid. The words repeated again and again. No one shouted for war yet. No fleets launched. No speeches filled the airwaves. Humans moved quiet and careful. They talked in low voices. They made plans in private rooms. They looked at star maps and supply lists. They remembered every child lost in past years to Dominion hands. They counted the names and the dates. Lena Voss sat alone in a small room after the soldiers left. She held Mira's favorite toy, a soft cloth doll with button eyes. Tears ran down her face, but she made no sound. Her hands shook when she touched the doll. She whispered one promise. I will make them pay, not with anger, but with cold, clear purpose. Far above, Viceroy Thalkar returned to his throne. He drank strong wine and smiled at his officers. The matter is finished, he said. The humans will pay double next cycle. They know their place now. His officers agreed and raised glasses. Thought the lesson was complete. They did not see what happened in human homes that night. Parents held their children closer. They told stories of old Earth battles and quiet revenge. They sharpened tools and checked hidden weapons. They wrote letters to distant family and friends. The words stayed simple. We remember. We wait. We prepare. 3 standard months passed. The Dominion celebrated the pacification of Kalis. 4 tribute arrived on time. Human ambassadors spoke mild words in the Galactic Assembly. No one moved warships. No one threatened open fight. The Empire felt safe. But in quiet shipyards far from prying eyes, human workers ran extra shifts. They loaded freighters with ore and medical crates and farm machines. No one asked questions. The cargo manifests looked normal. But inside the crates small parts waited. Parts that could build something new. Parts that could end old rules. A single word began to spread in closed human channels. Account. The word carried weight. Meant balance. It meant debt. It meant nothing would stay the same. On Kalis 4, the market plaza stayed empty for many days. People avoided the spot where Mira fell. Flowers appeared there one morning, small white blooms placed by unseen hands. No sign marked the place. No statue rose. Yet every human who passed looked once and nodded once. The memory lived deep. Viceroy Thalkar slept well. He dreamed of endless tribute and bowed heads. He never guessed the true cost had only started. He never imagined that killing one human kid would wake something ancient and patient, something that did not forgive, something that always collected what it was owed. The galaxy turned on its axis, stars burned steady, ships moved through black space, and somewhere in the dark, a quiet promise grows stronger with every passing hour. 3 standard months passed after the day in the plaza on Kalis 4. The Dominion felt proud and calm. Tribute ships landed on schedule and left full of ore and grain. Viceroy Thalkar walked the halls of his command ship with his head high. He spoke to his officers in loud, confident tones. The humans have learned, he said. Their silence proves it. They will not dare refuse again. The officers nodded and smiled. They believed the lesson worked perfectly. In the Galactic Assembly Chambers, human ambassadors sat quiet. They wore plain gray suits and spoke only when asked. Their words stayed mild and careful. "We regret the loss of life," they said. "We ask for fair treatment under existing treaties." No one raised a voice. No one threatened. No one mentioned revenge. The other species listened and shrugged. Humans always talked like that, weak and polite. The Empire saw no danger. Thalkar hosted a grand feast on his flagship to celebrate the pacification. Guests from many client worlds came, ate rich food and drank strong drinks. They laughed about the small girl and the turned backs. One Arkan noble raised his glass. "To the end of human stubbornness," he said. The room cheered. Thalkar felt warm inside. He thought the matter closed forever. Far from the core worlds, human space stayed busy and secret. Shipyards on distant moons ran extra shifts. Workers wore plain coveralls and moved fast. They loaded freighters with crates marked as food supplies, medical gear, and farming tools. The manifests looked normal. Customs officers from the Dominion scanned them and waved them through. Nothing seemed wrong. Inside those crates, hidden compartments held other things. Small, precise devices made of rare metals. Thin wires that carried no signal until needed. Powders that looked like fertilizer but burned hotter than any Dominion fuel. Engineers worked late into artificial nights. They tested parts in quiet rooms. They spoke in low voices and used hand signs when they talked about the plan. Records stayed on open networks. Everything moved by trusted couriers or memory chips carried in pockets. On Earth, in old cities and new arcologies, families gathered in private homes. Parents sat with their children and told stories. Stories about brave people who waited long before they struck back. Children listened wide-eyed. They asked questions and learned patience. Adults checked hidden lockers. They counted ammunition and power cells. They wrote names on lists of people who had lost sons and daughters to Dominion hands over many years. Donations arrived at doors without warning, envelopes with credits and notes that said only, "For the next one." No sender name appeared. Families accepted the gifts and added the money to their own quiet funds. They bought tools and training and safe houses. They prepared without rush. They knew time worked in their favor. In military chat rooms deep inside secure nets, the word spread. Account. It appeared in messages and vanished fast. Carried no explanation yet. Everyone who saw it understood. Soldiers, pilots, engineers, medics. They all knew the meaning. Balance. A debt written in blood. A promise kept without noise. A young officer named Reyes sat in a small cabin on a supply runner. He stared at a hollow image of his little sister, lost years ago to an Archon raid. He touched the screen once, then closed it. He typed one word into the encrypted line. Account. The reply came quick. Ready when you are. He smiled thin and turned back to his duties. Freighters kept moving. They crossed borders and docked at Dominion ports. Traders smiled at guards and handed over papers. Everything looked routine. One ship carried medical crates. Another brought seeds and soil. Another held machine parts. All passed inspection. No one opened the hidden sections. No one asked why so many ships traveled the same routes. No one noticed the pattern yet. On Kalis 4, the people rebuilt slow. The market plaza stayed empty for weeks. Then, one morning, stalls returned. Vendors set up tables and called out prices. Children played again, but closer to their parents. Eyes watched the sky more often. Lena Voss walked through the streets. She wore dark clothes and kept her face calm. People nodded to her, but did not speak loud. No one asked about her daughter. The wound stayed fresh and private. She visited the spot where Mira fell. Flowers still appeared there every few days, small white blooms placed by hands no one saw. Lena knelt once and touched the ground. She whispered no words. She stood and walked away. Her steps stayed steady. Her eyes stayed dry in public. At night in her small room, she looked at the cloth doll and planned. She drew maps on scraps of paper. She marked names and places. She waited. Dominion intelligence reports came in steady. The analysts sat in bright rooms and studied data. Human fleet movements stayed normal. No warships gathered. No battle groups formed. Trade continued. Tribute flowed. The conclusion stayed simple. Execution worked. The humans fear us now. Thalkar read the reports and laughed. He ordered a new tax increase for the next cycle. He wanted to test the lesson again. Client species watched from the sides. They sent spies and listened to rumors. Some whispered that humans hid their anger. Others said humans had no anger left. The Archon ignored the whispers. They trusted their ships and their soldiers. They believed soft skins broke easy. In a hidden base on a cold outer moon, a group met. They wore no uniforms. They sat around a plain table. A woman named Captain Hale spoke first. Her voice stayed low and clear. "We start small," she said. "We collect piece by piece. No big moves yet. No open war. We make them pay slow." The others nodded. They added names to the list. They assigned tasks. They set timers. One man stood and spoke. He lost a son to Dominion mines years ago. His words came hard. "We do not forgive," he said. "We do not forget." The room stayed silent after that. Months ticked by. The Dominion grew bold again. Thalkar appeared on public feeds. He stood tall in his red cloak. He spoke to the galaxy. "The humans kneel now," he said. "Their defiance ends here." Other species clapped in their assemblies. They felt safe. The Empire stayed strong. But in the dark between stars, human ships moved quiet. They carried no flags and no markings. They slipped past patrols and waited in shadows. Engineers checked systems one more time. Pilots plotted jumps. Medics packed kits. Everyone knew their role. No one spoke of glory. No one spoke of mercy. They spoke only of the account. A single freighter left a quiet dock on a human fringe world. It carried ore on the manifest. Inside the hold, small devices waited. They looked simple. They felt light. They carried names etched on metal plates. One name read Mira Voss. Others held different names. All belonged to children gone too soon. The ship jumped toward a Dominion luxury route. No one tracked it close. No alarms sounded. The galaxy spun on. Stars burned cold. And somewhere in the silence, the first true cost began to form. Thalkar slept in his private quarters. He dreamed of gold tribute and endless power. He smiled in his sleep. He never heard the quiet hum of engines far away. He never felt the weight of eyes watching from the black. He never guessed that 3 months of silence hid 3 months of perfect preparation. The debt waited patient. It needed only the right moment. The moment approached slow and sure. The Empire rested easy. Humanity waited ready. The balance shifted inch by inch, and no one in power saw it coming yet. A luxury liner named Star of Arca cut through hyperspace on its way from the core to the pleasure moons. The ship carried gold trim and soft lights inside. Viceroy Thalkar's sister rode in the best suite with her mate and 3 young ones. Cousins and friends filled the other cabins. They laughed and drank fine wine. They spoke of the easy victory on Kalis 4. They toasted the Viceroy's wisdom. The liner jumped smooth from beacon to beacon. No trouble expected. No guards needed beyond the usual crew. Then the ship vanished. No flash, no signal, no debris drifted in normal space. Dominion trackers searched for hours. They found nothing. The route stayed empty. The liner simply disappeared from every chart and log. Hours later, a short message arrived at Imperial Command. It came through an open channel used only for emergencies. The words appeared plain and cold. 1. The message ended there. No sender name, no explanation. Just the number. Panic started small. Officers in the command center stared at the screen. They checked logs twice. They sent probes. They asked other ships if they saw anything. No one did. Falcar received the news in his private dining hall. He dropped his glass. The wine spilled red across white cloth. He ordered full scans of the route. He demanded answers. His voice shook a little, but he hid it behind anger. Days passed. The Empire told the public it was an accident, a drive failure, a rare storm in hyperspace. People nodded and moved on. Then another loss came. A full battle group vanished near the Perseus Veil. 6 heavy cruisers, 1 carrier, and support ships. They escorted a tributarium convoy loaded with rare crystals. The group jumped together. They never arrived. Again, no wreckage, no distress call, no trace. Rescue fleets swept the area. They found empty space. Then the second message came. 2. The number stood alone, on screens across the Dominion worlds. Officers whispered in halls. Admirals met in closed rooms. They argued about pirates, about malfunctions, about sabotage. No proof pointed anywhere. Falcar stood before the Imperial Senate. He wore his full robes. He spoke strong words. "We face cowards who hide," he said. "We will crush them soon." The senators clapped, but their eyes looked worried. Client species watched from their boxes. They stayed silent. They wondered if the Empire still controlled the black. Forensic teams studied the empty zones, where ships should have been. They found something new. Tiny particles floated in the void. Particles too small for normal sensors to catch. They glowed faint under special light. Dominion scientists named them unknown residue. Human labs already knew the name. Kasaba howitzer residue. An old human weapon reborn in quiet workshops. The particles came from shaped nuclear charges designed to tear ships apart in jump space. No shield stopped them. No armor mattered. The blasts left almost nothing behind. Human ambassadors sat in council chambers. They listened to accusations with calm faces. They answered soft. "We know nothing of these losses. Space holds many dangers. Pirates, storms, old mines. Perhaps you should search better." The Archons slammed tables. Humans smiled polite and left the room. Falcar ordered mobilization. Every fleet in the sector received orders. Move to human borders. Prepare for punishment strikes. Warships gathered at rally points. Engines warmed. Jump drives charged. Officers felt ready. They would burn human worlds until the cowards showed themselves. The fleets never reached the targets. The first group approached a jump gate near the border. The gate stood tall and silver. It opened wide for the lead ship. Then a bright flash came. The gate collapsed inward. Antimatter charges placed months earlier by human maintenance crews ripped the structure apart. Metal twisted, energy arced. The gate vanished in a sphere of white fire. The shockwave damaged nearby ships. 12 gates fell in 1 week, each one rigged long before the losses started. Posed as contractors. They smiled at guards. They carried toolboxes. They left small packages behind. No one checked close. No one suspected. The Empire relied on those gates for fast travel. Now the gates burned, and the fleet sat stuck. Messages kept coming. 3, 4, 5. Each number arrived after another loss. A supply depot exploded on a core world. A fuel station melted near an Archon colony. A governor's yacht drifted empty, with its crew gone. The numbers climbed slow and steady. Falcar paced his bridge. He shouted at officers. He demanded fleets move anyway. Use slow drives. Use secondary routes. Anything. His admirals shook their heads. The routes took months. The humans would see them coming. The element of surprise stayed lost. In human space, the mood stayed quiet. No parades, no victory chants. People worked normal jobs. They shopped. They laughed with friends. But eyes watched screens for new numbers. Families gathered around holofeeds. When a new count appeared, they nodded once. They said nothing loud. The account grew. A pilot named Chen flew a small scout near the Veil. He carried no weapons, only sensors. He watched Dominion ships try to jump without gates. He saw them fail. He sent one encrypted ping home. The reply came fast. Keep watching. The next phase begins soon. Chen smiled and turned his ship toward home. On a fringe world, a woman named Mara stood in her workshop. She built small devices with steady hands. Her brother died years ago in a Dominion raid. She etched a number on each device. 6 for her brother, 7 for a neighbor's son. The numbers matched the messages. She boxed them careful and sent them on freighters. No one asked questions. The Dominion economy shook. Trade slowed. Ships stayed docked. Merchants lost credits. Client worlds pulled back. They sent less tribute. They whispered in private. They feared the next number would hit closer to home. Thalkar sat alone in his quarters. He stared at a holomap. Red markers showed lost ships, and Gates' green markers showed human space, still quiet. He clenched his fists. He spoke to the empty room. What do they want? He received no answer. A new broadcast cut through Dominion channels. It came from nowhere and everywhere at once. Human faces appeared, parents holding old pictures of children lost long ago. A voice spoke calm. You started this. Now we finish it. The screen went dark. The messages stopped counting for one day. The Empire waited tense. They hoped the storm passed. They hoped wrong. Far away in a dark yard, a human freighter waited. Engines cold, weapons hot. Its crew looked at the stars. They knew their turn approached. They carried devices marked with high numbers. They carried purpose. They carried no fear. The first cost stayed small. The Empire still stood tall. But cracks appeared in the foundation, small at first, then wider. The galaxy watched quiet, and humanity prepared the next step. Thalkar looked out his viewport at the black. He saw only stars. See the debt growing. He did not see the bill rising. He did not know yet how high the price would climb. Humanity stopped hiding. A single broadcast broke through every Dominion channel at once. It pushed past military locks and filled screens on warships, palaces, markets, and homes. The image showed one woman standing alone. Lena Voss looked straight into the camera. Her face stayed calm. Her voice came clear and steady. Behind her, a long wall held hundreds of holoframes. Each frame showed a child, a boy with a toy ship, a girl holding flowers, a baby wrapped in blue cloth. Names, dates, places of death, all lost to Dominion hands over many years. Parents stood silent beside Lena. Siblings held hands. Teachers, soldiers, colonists. They carried no weapons. They needed none. Lena spoke slow. You taught us the price of defiance. Now we teach you the price of touching our children. The words hung in the air. The feed cut sharp. No threats followed. No demands appeared. Only the faces stayed burned into every mind across the Empire. Operation Account began at that moment. Sleeper cells woke up. People who lived quiet lives for years. Traders who smiled at guards. Colonists who paid tribute without complaint. Former slaves who cleaned Arkan halls. They moved at the same time. No big fleets came. No armies landed. They struck from inside. On the capital world of Arc Prime, a fusion plant fed power to half the city. Workers there included 3 humans. They looked like any other techs. They wore badges and carried tools. At the exact hour they opened hidden panels. They placed small charges shaped to look like spare parts. The plant melted down slow at first, then fast. Lights went dark across districts. Air recyclers failed. Heat rose. People ran into streets shouting. The meltdown looked like an old accident. No one found human prints. The number 6 appeared on a single screen in the governor's office before it died. Water systems failed next. On 3 major colony worlds, recyclers poisoned the flow. The toxin keyed only to Arcan biology. Humans drank from separate tanks. Dominion citizens fell sick fast. Hospitals filled. Doctors worked without rest. No cure came quick. The poison spread through pipes and left no trace back to the hands that placed it. Number 7 flashed on newsfeeds, then vanished. Orbital mirrors turned. One by one they caught sunlight and focused it tight. Governor palaces burned. Clean white fire ate through gold roofs and crystal walls. Guards ran but could not stop the beams. The mirrors stayed locked on target until the job finished. Number 8. Number 9. The count climbed. Client species pulled away fast. They sent messages to their home fleets. Stay neutral. The Empire bleeds, let it bleed alone. Trade stopped. Ships turned back. Borders closed quiet. The Dominion stood more alone with every hour. Thalkar's palace sat high on a mountain of black stone. Guards patrolled every hall. Drones watched every door. For years a human engineer worked there. He fixed lights, cleaned vents, replaced panels. He smiled polite. He spoke little. Learned every secret path, every weak point. One night he walked in through the service gate. He carried a small bag. No alarm sounded. He knew the codes. He reached the throne room. Guards lay asleep from gas in the vents. He stepped past them. He looked at the tall chair where Thalkar sat so many times. He took a tool from his bag. He carved slow and deep into the wall. The bill is due. 5 words in clean Arcan script. He left no other mark. He walked out the same way he came. No one saw him go. Thalkar woke to alarms. His palace shook from distant explosions. He ran to the throne room. He saw the words. He froze. His claws scratched the stone. He shouted for his guards. They came running but found nothing. The engineer already rode a small shuttle away. He jumped to a waiting freighter. The ship slipped into the black. The economy broke hard. Credits lost value. Ships sat empty. Factories stopped. Goods piled up with no buyers. Worlds went hungry. The Senate met in panic. Blamed each other. They blamed Thalkar. They looked for any way to stop the fall. Human cells kept working. They hit power grids. They cut supply lines. They burned storehouses. They left numbers behind. 10, 11, 12. Each strike stayed small. Each one hurt deep. No mercy showed. No prisoners taken. No warnings given. The account demanded payment in full. A young Dominion officer stood on a burning dock. He watched his ship sink slow. He whispered to his friend, "They are not fighting a war. They are collecting a debt." His friend nodded. They both knew the truth now. The Empire taught a lesson. Humanity returned the teaching. On fringe worlds, humans walked free again. They carried no fear. Children played in open streets. Parents watched but smiled. No Dominion ship dared land. No soldier showed his face. The message stayed clear. Touch our young and lose everything. Thalkar sat in a dark chamber. He looked old. His scales lost shine. His eyes stayed dull. He spoke to empty air. Want? He knew the answer now. He just refused to say it loud. Lena Voss stood on Kalis 4. She looked at the stars. She held Mira's doll tight. She spoke soft to the night. It is not over yet, but the cost rises. They will learn. The galaxy shifted. Client worlds talked peace. Other empires watched close. They saw the Dominion crack. They saw humanity stand tall. They learned a new rule. Never harm the child. Never wake that quiet storm. The reckoning rolled on. Numbers climbed higher. Cities dimmed. Palaces smoked. The empire that ruled for centuries felt small for the first time. The bill kept coming. No discount. No mercy. Only payment. And the debt stayed large. The Galactic Empire broke apart piece by piece. Worlds once loyal turned their backs. Client species sent quiet messages to human envoys. They asked for talks. They offered trade. They promised no more tribute to the Arkan core. The Dominion homeworld, Arc Prime, stood almost alone. Ships no longer came. Ships no longer left. Smoke rose from ruined districts. Power stayed off for days. People walked hungry streets and looked up at empty skies. Falkar stayed in his ruined palace. Guards left one by one. They took what they could carry and vanished. He sat on the cracked throne. He stared at the carved words on the wall. The bill is due. His claws scratched the stone again and again. He spoke to shadows. What more do they want? No answer came. Only silence filled the halls. A small delegation arrived at last. 3 human diplomats walked through the broken gates. They wore plain gray suits. No weapons showed. No guards followed. They carried one simple folder. Lena Voss led them. She looked older now. Lines marked her face, but her eyes stayed clear and hard. They met Thalkar in the empty throne room. Dust covered the floor. Broken glass crunched under boots. Lena placed the folder on a small table. She opened it slow. One page lay inside, thick paper with black ink. A new galactic law written plain. No child shall be harmed as punishment for the actions of adults. Violation revokes all protections under civilized law. The words stayed short. No extra lines, no threats, only the rule and the cost of breaking it. Thalkar read the page. His hands shook. He looked up at Lena. His voice came weak. You ask for this only. Lena nodded once. This only. Sign it and the account closes. No more numbers, no more losses. Your worlds keep their names. Your people keep their homes. Refuse, and we continue until nothing remains. The viceroy stared at the paper long. Minutes passed. He took the stylus. His claws scratched his name at the bottom. The ink dried fast. The delegation turned and left. Followed. No victory shouts. They walked out into the smoke and dust. Words spread quick. The treaty reached every corner of known space. Client worlds cheered in quiet rooms. Other empires sent congratulations. They called it wise. They called it fair. They all knew the truth. Humanity drew a line. No one crossed it again. Human children walked free on alien worlds once more. They played in parks on Dominion moons. They laughed in markets on neutral stations. No hand rose against them. No voice spoke harsh. Parents watched close, but fear left their eyes. Traders smiled wider. Diplomats bowed a little deeper when they met humans. Old spacers told stories to new crews. You can fight humans over land, over trade, over pride, but never over their kids. The Empire learned that the hard way. The cost was not credits or ships. It was everything they thought permanent. Years passed. The new law stayed etched in every charter, every treaty, every station wall. Children grew up, knowing the rule. It, early. Parents told it simple. Touch one of ours, and the galaxy pays. The words carried weight. No one laughed. No one forgot. On Kalis 4, the market plaza filled again. Stalls sold bright fruit and fresh bread. Children ran between tables. Mira's spots stayed marked with small white flowers. New blooms appeared every morning. No one claimed credit. People just nodded and walked on. Lena Voss lived in a small house near the edge of town. She kept Mira's doll on a shelf. She looked at it every night. She spoke soft words to it. The debt closed. Now we live. One evening, a young Arcan trader landed on the planet. He came to buy grain. He walked the streets careful. He saw human children play. He stopped and watched. A small boy ran past and smiled. The Arcan knelt. He offered a bright stone from his homeworld. The boy took it and said thank you. The trader stood and walked away. His steps stayed light. He carried the story home. He told his kin, humans forgive when the price pays. They do not forgive when it does not. Falkar lived out his days on a quiet moon far from Arc Prime. He grew thin. His scales dulled. He sat by a window and watched stars. He spoke little. He thought much. In the end, he understood. The empires thought power came from fear. Humanity showed power came from love, fierce enough to burn worlds. He closed his eyes one night and never opened them again. No one mourned loud. The galaxy moved on. Humanity grew steady. Colonies spread. Ships explored new arms of the galaxy. They built schools, hospitals, gardens. They taught their young the old stories. They taught the new law. They kept watch, but they kept peace. Trade flowed again. Routes stayed open. Voices stayed calm. The account stayed balanced. No new debts appeared. In quiet bars on fringe stations, spacers raised glasses. They toasted the kid they never knew. They toasted the mother who spoke for millions. They toasted the silence that followed the turned backs. They said the same words every time. They killed a kid. The galaxy never forgets what came after. The stars burned steady. Planets turned. Ships crossed the black. Children laughed under many suns. The new understanding held firm. It stayed simple and clear. Harm the innocent and lose it all. The empire paid the price. Others watched and learned. No one tested the rule again. Time rolled forward. Generations passed. The story stayed alive. Parents told it. Children listened. Wide eyes grew serious. They asked questions. Why did they do it? The answer came always the same. Because we protect our own. Because some lines stay sacred. Because the cost teaches better than words. On a warm evening, on a green world, a grandmother sat with her granddaughter. The girl held a cloth doll, much like the one Mira loved long ago. The old woman touched the doll and smiled. She spoke soft. The galaxy changed that day, because one small life mattered more than empires. Because humans do not bend when children fall. Because we remember and we make sure no one forgets. The girl nodded. She hugged the doll tight. She looked at the stars outside the window. She felt safe. She felt strong. The story lived in her now. It would live in her children too. The debt closed, but the lesson stayed open forever. The Galactic Empire faded into history. Books called it the Reckoning. Maps marked old borders in faint lines. New powers rose. New alliances formed. Humanity stood tall among them, not as conquerors, not as rulers, as guardians of one unbreakable rule. No child pays for adult choices. The price stays too high. And so the galaxy turned. Peace held steady. Stars shone bright. Children grew free. The cost stayed remembered. The lesson stayed taught. The end came quiet and sure, just as the beginning had come loud and cruel.